Nintendo.
Luigi's Mansion was released on September 14th, 2001 as a launch title for the GameCube. While it's a beloved game nowadays, back when it was first released, it was more than a tad divisive among Mario fans who were expecting something along the lines of Super Mario 64. While they did eventually get their wish about a year later in the form of Super Mario Sunshine, which was also divisive at the time humorously, it left Luigi's Mansion in a bit of an awkward position to say the least. It played much differently from the Mario norm, which turned off many hardcore Mario fans. But as time went on, people warmed up to it, and eventually, by the end of the GameCube's lifespan, it ended up becoming one of the system's best sellers. Now, nearly 2 decades later, Luigi's Mansion is considered an iconic classic of the franchise. But what caused the sudden change? What happened to make a game that was originally so mixed turned into a game so beloved that it got into the top 5 best sellers for its platform? Well, that's why I'm here. My friends, I'm ScourgeBladeZelda, and I welcome you to the review arena where I face off against the good, the bad, and everything in between of gaming. Today, it's the haunting debut of the GameCube's soon-to-be legendary roster of adventure, Luigi's Mansion. Heaven or hell, let's rock! Luigi's Mansion has, I think, one of the most interesting development histories of any game ever. And I don't say things like that lightly. It was actually rumored to have started all the way back during the N64 era. It was still in the planning phase by then though, so there's no physical proof of this, at least not to my knowledge. However, it was decided very early on that what the developers had planned was too much for the N64 to handle, so they started developing the game alongside Nintendo's new console secretly in development, Project Dolphin, later named the GameCube. As such, the now widely coveted GameCube controller was actually designed with this game in mind, such as having 2 analog sticks. The developers had several arguments with the programmers about the game's features to the point where a good chunk of them were added very late in development, such as pressing the B button to turn off the flashlight to allow more freedom. A good amount of time was spent just working on the lighting and visual effects. Hell, one developer spent 6 months just developing the dust cloud animations. If that's not dedication, I don't know what is. It was first officially shown off to the public at Space World 2000 as a tech demo in order to show off the power of the GameCube, but it was all just pre-rendered stuff, no actual gameplay. It was then shown off again at E3 2001, this time with actual gameplay. It had tons of scrapped features that made the beta look a hell of a lot harder than the final game ended up being. Not to mention a ton creepier if this nightmare fuel is anything to go by. Not to mention the beta theme of the mansion is different, which is what you're listening to right now. It's synthesized, not orchestrated like the final game, but it's much creepier, adding to the more brutal setting the game was originally going to have. First of all, the player was required to save Mario within a certain time limit, and the Game Boy Horror's original purpose was to serve as the player's clock. Scrapped ghosts that appeared in the hallways known as bashers by fans that would spook Luigi, cut his HP in half, and leave him to crawl on the floor helpless for a few seconds. So, it literally scares him half to death. I'll be here all week. There was also a heat meter for the Poltergust 3000, then called the Poltergust 400 for some reason, that would fill up as you vacuum. When it reached full, the Poltergust would explode, causing Luigi to take damage. It was later repurposed as the element meter in the final game. And just recently, it was discovered that a stretched player model of Mario exists in the game's files, meaning there was going to be a type of multiplayer planned. That sounds like a lot, but believe me, I'm just scratching the surface here. If I went through it all, we'd be here all day. Though if you want to know more about the Luigi's Mansion beta, I'll have a link to Beta 64's video on it in the description. Give it a watch, it's very interesting. Now then, let's get this show on the road and move on to the final product that we actually got. Starting with the story.
Luigi.
which I'll say right now, really won't take very long at all. One day in the Mushroom Kingdom, Luigi wakes up to find out that he has won a whole mansion in a contest that he didn't even enter. Luigi, obviously, smells something fishy going on, so he sends Mario over to the mansion to go investigate. He never hears back from Mario, however, and decides to go over himself to look for him. Upon entering the mansion, however, he soon learns that it's haunted, prompting Luigi to be attacked by ghosts. He is saved in the nick of time, however, by a ghost researcher by the name of Professor Elvin Gadd, who tells Luigi that this mansion just appeared one day thanks to the booze. He had traveled around the world collecting ghosts and turning them into paintings for his art gallery, and he had just caught the gigantic Boolossus. However, King Boo had rallied up the remaining boos to take revenge on him, and not only freed Boolossus, but the rest of his gallery ghosts as well. They then built the mansion overnight as a hideout. He even says he saw Mario go into the mansion earlier, but he quickly vanished. Professor Egad decides to help Luigi in his quest to save him by giving him the Poltergust 3000, a special vacuum that works as a way of fighting the ghosts. Now that he's armed, Luigi finds the boos and later on Mario, who has been kidnapped by King Boo and imprisoned in a painting. Luigi ventures onward through the mansion until he comes face to face with King Boo and saves Mario to turn him back to normal. And yeah, that's it. That ends the story of Luigi's Mansion, pretty much. I mean, it's a Mario game. Of course the story is going to be simple, but simple isn't necessarily a bad thing. At least not in this case. It's easy for newbies to pick up and understand, and it serves its purpose well. The only problems this story suffers from are small logistical oversights. 3 to be specific. The first of which being Mario's imprisonment. The game acts like being inside a painting is a bad thing when the entire existence of Super Mario 64 says otherwise. This applies to the portrait ghosts too, by the way. Yeah, I know it's a Mario game, I can't get too technical, but I would at least like some consistency in the worlds of my games, damn it. It's the same problem I had with Link being too young to wield the Master Sword in Ocarina of Time, yet younger Links in other games can use it just fine. Number 2 has to do with his dropped items within the mansion, which hold no value in the search at all in the long run. The letter and star don't bother me, since those really are just items. But the hat, glove, and shoe are accessories, yet when you find Mario imprisoned by King Boo, his model is clearly seen with all 3. What, did he for some reason have spares of each? No way can I believe something that convenient. I might be getting a bit too nitpicky here, I'll admit that. I should probably just forget it and have fun instead of bringing logic into everything I see, but I can't help it. This is just the way I am. When I play games, I like to give them my full attention. I want to immerse myself in the game I'm playing as the character I'm playing, as if these were my own adventures. And doing so leads me to notice little things like this, and it bugs me when developers don't pay good attention to detail. Or maybe it's not their fault at all. Maybe they did notice it and just didn't have the time to fix it. Who knows, really? I don't know, man. As I said, these are just nitpicks, so take them with a grain of salt. Although I do at least wish that parts of the narrative weren't relegated to optional flavor text in the gallery. This brings us to number 3. Most people will opt to just go to the mansion right away after the tutorial without ever finding out about how Egad got the gallery ghost in the first place or about King Boo's rally. For a long time, I was led to believe that all the portrait ghosts were always one family because of the mansion, but this tells me they aren't. Egad said he got them from around the world, meaning they were never together from the start. Besides these, though, most of them don't interact with each other. They're all just there on their own. This could have easily been info that was added when Luigi first talks to him in the lab, and nothing would have been lost. As it stands, you're never likely to know any of this unless you're the kind of guy who goes out of his way to look around, like I am. And for those who don't care and just want to get to the gameplay can just mash through the text, since games allow you to do that. A story shouldn't depend on player choice to get the most out of it unless it's a selling point. It's sloppy and inconsistent. The presentation, on the other hand, is anything but inconsistent. Despite having the premise of a horror game, it's still very colorful and charming at its core, per Mario fashion. To Egad's... the boos with how they're treated like commanders of sorts to the personalities of the portrait ghosts and how they interact with Luigi. I also love Mario's... That cracks me up just how impatient and dickish he sounds here. You could say it takes away from your motivation to save him a bit due to how ungrateful he sounds, and while that point is valid to some extent, I personally always like to think, "Alright, Dad, hold on. I'm busy watering these plants." God, if he wants to complain, then I'll just delay the plot on purpose to spite him. It's the little things, folks. The best of it all, though, is without a doubt Luigi himself. This right here is why I much prefer Luigi over Mario. There is never a dull moment when controlling him. The amount of small details they took to add to this game is magnificent. Luigi is always scared when it's dark, but when the lights are on and there's no music, Luigi instead whistles the theme comfortably like he's on a Saturday morning stroll. It's adorable. He'll give his opinions when you scan things with the Game Boy Horror, how he takes his hat off and shakes it when you get hit by fire, how he shivers in the cold despite there only being one ice room in the game, how the game says goodnight along with Luigi's whimpers whenever you die. I could keep going. Seriously, that shivering one wasn't even necessary, but they did it anyway. It's amazing. His victory poses also feel more rewarding than Mario's ever did, because you know how Luigi feels during each hardship, while Mario just keeps the same dopey smile on his face throughout all of his adventures. You feel genuinely happy for Luigi, and you want to see him succeed. It's also apparent that Luigi really cares for Mario a lot, since there's a dedicated button to calling him when you're not checking anything. And the lower his health is, the more desperate his cries get. I love this voice clip. Everybody loves this voice clip, and for good reason. If I didn't mention it, then I don't think I'd be able to forgive myself. Not only is this the case with the Mario calls either, it happens with most of his other normal voice clips too. Let me demonstrate. I love when developers do things like this. You can practically feel the effort pouring out of the game. It's wonderful. All the portrait ghosts feel distinct and charming as well. While their personalities aren't too balanced between all the portrait ghosts since you don't get to spend too much time with most of them, they make good use of what little screen time they have, and it's always consistent throughout the whole game. The music is very well crafted to fit the setting, and the mansion theme is something that gets stuck in my head for a while. You'll scarcely get tired of it. However, there's not much more to it other than that. Most of the tracks are either one-shot pieces you hear for like 5 seconds and never again for the rest of the game, or just different renditions of the main mansion theme, and while it's fantastic, it leaves a lot to be desired for people like me who want some more variety in their music. This never got to the point of annoying me, mind you, but it's kinda disappointing nonetheless. The smaller sounds do their best to make up for it, though. The most interesting to me are the sounds that carry between rooms. What I mean by this is that loud noises can be heard from outside of their rooms. If you're in the hallway of Area 2, for instance, you can hear Mr. Luggs eating outside the dining room and Melody playing her piano from outside the conservatory. We're inside a mansion, so it makes sense that sounds can be heard from different rooms. I really wish more games did things like this. It works wonders for the immersion. I almost wish I could find a loophole somewhere, but there really isn't, besides music and petty nitpicks. I couldn't ask for much more in a game's presentation. Let's move on to gameplay. As I said earlier, Luigi's Mansion plays differently compared to most Mario games, and even Mario spin-offs. Instead of being a platformer like the Mario series is known for, this goes for more of an explorer type of experience. You're examining each room by interacting with the furniture to search for keys to progress within the mansion. But, of course, it's haunted, so you gotta turn the lights on first. To do that, you gotta vacuum all the ghosts in the room Ghostbusters style, be it a portrait ghost or just a bunch of small fry. This is the main gameplay feature of Luigi's Mansion. To vacuum a ghost, you're required to shine your flashlight at them to make them show their hearts, and then, by pressing and holding R, you can suck them up. Sounds simple, but it's actually much more interactive than it looks. The process of sucking up a ghost is by lowering their HP via a tug-of-war between you and the ghost as it tries to escape from you. By tilting the control stick in the opposite direction that the ghost is facing, you can reduce its HP until it drops to 0. Then they're yours for the taking. Shining the flashlight isn't as consistent as I'd like it to be, though. Supposedly, the flashlight should stun them for a split second, and if you're not fast enough to suck them up, they'll disappear. The closer you are to them, the longer they stay stunned, but I swear this isn't the case. Too many times have I shined the flashlight right at a ghost's face, and it vanishes instantly, not giving me the time to press the R button. I do sometimes see a difference in distance, so this isn't an outright lie, but it seems to only work when it feels like it. You can also hold the B button to turn the flashlight off, as previously mentioned, and turn it back on to stun them that way, but that never works for me personally, so I never use it. It may be different for you, though, who knows. The portrait ghosts work differently, though. They don't show their hearts so easily, so you'll have to do something to catch them off guard before you can vacuum them up. That's where the Game Boy Horror comes in. By pressing X, you can go into a first-person view through the Game Boy Horror and scan things, including the hearts of portrait ghosts, which gives you hints on how to beat them or flesh out their personalities a bit. For example, the portrait ghost Sue P is asleep and mutters about promising not to wet the bed. This gives you the idea to use water to wake her up so she can reveal her heart to you, and then you can suck her up. Or sometimes it's as simple as waiting for the dance whirlwindas to finish their dance and bow. All of the portrait ghosts are fought like this, whether it's using something like the elements to stun them or just waiting for the right time. It's an enjoyable system to be sure, but it's tiring in long play sessions since you're required to hold down one of the trigger buttons for almost half of your play time, so it's easy to tire out your fingers while playing this game. Back to the elements though. About halfway into the game, you'll obtain 3 element medals, one for fire, water, and ice. They work like a weapon triangle. Fire beats ice, water beats fire, and ice beats water, the usual. And they're needed to beat some of the ghosts as previously mentioned, or just to proceed further into the mansion. When you get the medals, these element ghosts will appear around their respective element, and by sucking them up, you can use the L button to blow said element from the poltergust. Luigi is the TF2 Pyro confirmed. You're welcome for the imagery. Good luck on seeing it. It's limited in use, though, and you can only have one element at a time, which in turn requires you to go back out of your way to get them from other areas when you run into a roadblock that requires a certain element to bypass. To prepare yourself for when this happens, because it will, to make your life easier, I recommend using the dining and kitchen rooms for this purpose. The dining room has torches for fire, the kitchen has a running sink for water, and a fridge for ice. And it's right in the middle of the mansion, so you won't have to backtrack too much. You're welcome. It's a cool idea in concept, but it's a tad half-baked if you ask me. They don't feel like upgrades, they feel like arbitrary permission slips. A better alternative is if the game allowed you to carry all 3 at once and switch between them at will at any time, but required you to suck up element ghosts as a type of fuel to keep them functional. I think this would have felt more natural for progression and less inconvenient for the player when they go to an area with the wrong element. While I wouldn't call it wasted potential exactly, it's not nearly as fleshed out as it could have been, with one exception for ice that I'll get back to. Other than that, the portrait ghosts are very enjoyable to interact with. Some of them attack Luigi, some just ignore him and mind their own business, and a few just want to talk or play with Luigi. Madame Clairvoya, for example, actually takes it upon herself to help Luigi and decides to let him suck her up when she's fulfilled her purpose. It's nice that not all of the portrait ghosts are outright hostile. Then there are the boos. After Area 1 is complete, when a room is lit, a boo will be hiding in the furniture for you to find and catch. The Game Boy Horror has a radar for said boos that works as a hot and cold system, but fighting them is a tad different from the others. They don't attack you, you can't trap them, nor are they limited to single rooms like normal ghosts, meaning they can switch from room to room. Until their HP is gone, you gotta use the poltergust to whittle down their HP and chase after them throughout the mansion. In darker rooms, their HP goes down much slower, so do your best to lure them into the lit rooms, though this doesn't always work. One thing I love about the boos are their names. They're all puns, and it's amazing. My favorites being Game Boo Advanced, Boomerang, Taboo, Kung Boo, Boomio, and Beauregard. Catching them, though, is a lot more annoying. The name of the game here is to use your movement to manipulate them into going the way you want them to, but it can lead you to take a few too many hits of unfair chip damage by them just running into you, and it sucks when they escape because of this. It sucks even more when they escape into a room you can't even enter yet, which happens a lot more often than you would think. There are 50 boos in total and 40 needed to complete the game. Otherwise, King Boo will show up at the final boss door and basically say, "Fuck off, come back when you have enough boos," and blows you away like a fly, and they don't give you a good reason for why this is at all. It's a very cheap way of stretching out game time. I wouldn't be so annoyed by this if I actually enjoyed catching all the boos, but I didn't. It's fine at the beginning, you could even call it a nice change of pace, but it overstays its welcome. By endgame, they have an absurd amount of health, causing you to have to go back and forth from room to room, and sometimes even other areas. Tell me, does this look at all fun to you? I sure as hell hope not, otherwise I'd call you crazy. To be honest, fighting the endgame boos is like trying to catch a legendary Pokemon at full health with a normal Pokeball. Luigi's Mansion. More like Luigi's Ghost House of Inconveniences. And that statement doesn't just apply to the boos either, unfortunately. In fact, it's my biggest problem with the game as a whole. The aiming is what annoyed me the most. It's very awkward, and I encountered countless instances of questionable hit detection from interactable objects. Trying to suck up a fucking heart should not be this hard. I have a hard time judging depth perception in this game because of the lack of noticeable shadows. This is also another reason why dealing with the boos is such a pain in the ass, because it can be hard to tell where they are on the Y-axis thanks to the fixed camera. Also, the triggers for opening doors are way too big. Look, I'm trying to check this cabinet to get the heart inside. I'm nowhere near the doorknob, but the game still registers me opening the door over checking the furniture, causing me to have to re-enter the room. Hell, I can't even open a goddamn treasure chest unless my position is just right. These may not sound like much, and to be fair, they aren't on their own. But the problem here is that combined, it builds up over the course of the game, and it hampers my experience overall. It's clearly noticeable that this is the first GameCube title. The controls and especially the physics engine are just plain insufficient. I could let it slide if it was only at sporadic intervals, but it's not. It's a constant annoyance that's present throughout the whole length of the game. But speaking of the length, let's get into the most obvious problem people have with this game. I'd love to say that a playthrough of Luigi's Mansion spanned longer than a single afternoon. However, if I did, I'd be lying. And nobody likes liars. You may think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. You can legitimately beat this game in about 4 or 5 hours. Maybe even less if you know what you're doing. While it keeps the game very replayable, it doesn't offer anything else beyond that. What you see is what you get here, which in this case is to its detriment. There is the Hidden Mansion, a sort of hard mode, but that's all it is really. A hard mode, in quotation marks. No other features are added beyond doing more damage and taking more damage. That's it. In other words, it's fake difficulty. It's very underwhelming. Honestly, I would have loved to see the beta version of the game make a return for the hard mode. It would have been so much better than this, that's for damn sure, because even then it doesn't feel much different. It only lives up to its status during the blackout. Everywhere else it feels the exact same, and it makes me wonder what the point of even adding this mode in was in the first place. Fuck, I'd argue it's even easier if you're looking to gold rank every portrait ghost. Take a look at how easily I suck up Neville here. And almost every portrait ghost from areas 1 to 3 can be beaten just like this. It's truly pathetic. Gold ranking a portrait ghost is much harder in the normal mansion in my opinion because of how much slower their health goes down, leaving more time for you to screw up or hit something. You see, every time you complete an area, you're judged on 2 things: your rank on each of the boss ghosts and how much money you've collected. To get gold rank on portrait ghosts, you'll need to suck them up in one go or close to one go without messing up after you've stunned them. When you vacuum a portrait ghost, they'll drop these pearls, which are worth a lot of money, which is the other thing you're ranked on. In fact, there are plenty of ways to get money in this game. By checking things, you may find coins, dollar bills, gold bars, or even a gem if you know where to look. There are also special ghosts called gold mice and speedy spirits that can fill this purpose as well. Speedy spirits in particular are tricky because they go really fast, and if you mess up, they ain't coming back unless you reset. There's about 30 of them total, and they can only be attempted once per playthrough. Catching any of these ghosts will reward you with a massive explosion of cash. And what does all this cash do for you, you may ask? Absolutely nothing except for determine your rank at the end of the game. Yup, that's it. I shit you not. There's no shop you can use to buy health or upgrades for the Poltergust or anything useful at all. And you can't even lose any of it unless you get hit or die. It has no value in-game whatsoever. Noticing a trend? I think I've made my point by now. Let's just move on to the walkthrough. The game is split up into 4 areas, which each hold their own set of portrait ghosts and a boss ghost at the end, so let's start from the top, shall we? Area 1, as one would expect, is more or less just the introduction to the game. It's the shortest of the areas by a country mile, and it's where most of the game's tutorials take place, minus the booze and the element medals, of course. It introduces some of the normal enemy ghosts, including these things that drop banana peels for you to slip on. I really wish these were used more. There is plenty of evil you can do with an enemy that leaves traps on the floor. Sadly, though, they're left hung to dry until Area 4, which is a real shame. Area 1 houses a portrait ghost of both types and the first real boss ghost. Novella and Lycia are nothing special. They serve as introductions to the portrait ghosts and nothing more. I don't mean anything too harsh when I say that. This isn't something I would consider good or bad. They do their jobs, and that's all to really say about them for the most part. Although I do enjoy how much personality Lycia shows and how the way you stun her both shows off that personality and is just plain funny to watch her panic when you do so. After you've sucked them both up, you're ready to move on to their child, Chauncey, which is ironically when the real show begins. Ignoring how morbid it is when you think that this is a literal ghost baby, it's the child that's the true boss and not the parents. After you wake him up and bop him in the head with a ball, he gets cranky and decides to shrink you so he becomes bigger than you. Oh, that's adorable! At least until he does this. Yeah, 'cause that ain't the face of nightmares or anything. Nope, not at all. And might I remind you, this is a fucking baby. Though this can be built up a bit if you take the time to read the books in the study that explain a few things like this, and the fact that Chauncey isn't the parent's only child, but I'll get back to that. The fight itself is passable. Chauncey has attacks that you're required to avoid before you can strike him to expose his heart like a typical boss fight, and don't think you can just suck him up all at once when you do, cause if so, you're in for a rude awakening. Since Chauncey is a boss ghost, you can't just suck him up in one go and be done with the fight like with his parents. He will break out after a certain amount of time, and this is the case for all the other boss ghosts in the game as well, which, to be honest, I'm super thankful for. But what bugs me is the predictability of the way he attacks you. He starts by throwing rocking horses at you, then the balls you use to stun him, then body slams after he escapes from being sucked up, and finally back to the horses that get faster as his health gets lower. And it's always in that order. This is way too predictable even for a first boss if you ask me. Now that might just be me having unreasonable standards for a game such as this. That could very well be the case, but I don't know. It's not like I'm asking him to be harder or anything, but this kind of thing just bugs me. It's not very organic in my opinion. I found out recently that for some reason this was fixed in the PAL version of the game, kind of, by making his attacks faster and harder to avoid, but that left me feeling cheated. Now, I'll say this is much more a localization problem caused by the developers and less the game itself, but it still doesn't make me feel at all satisfied when thinking of this boss. I'm getting off track though. Despite this, Chauncey serves his role as the first boss well enough, and in the end, that's all that matters. Therein ends Area 1. Area 2 is when the game truly opens up and throws the first main hallway at you. What sets hallways apart from the other rooms is that they only have 0 HP ghosts and small bats, but there are a lot of them. They're difficult to avoid because of the tight corridors, and they respawn every time you enter another room. Most of them are fine, but the worst of these ghosts are by far the ceiling ghosts. Get used to this noise, because these fuckers are everywhere. What's worse is that they keep making noise even when they're off-screen. It sucks the energy right out of the charming but creepy ambience the rest of the mansion exudes. They show up way too often, out of nowhere, and ruin the mood with their loud They just plain suck. God damn it, I hate shit like this. I'm sorry, but I really hate this sound, and I had to mention it for just how much it ruins the atmosphere for me. Thankfully, the new ghosts in the other rooms pick up the slack. Most notably these grabber ghosts that grab you and not only do damage, but they leave you open to something else like a purple puncher. Not to mention the noise they make when you trap them. I love this voice clip so much. These ghosts are used brilliantly throughout the whole game. They have the best use of different attack strategies besides just trying to hit Luigi really hard, and are used in some of the coolest rooms. I may be jumping ahead a bit here, but I need to talk about these rooms. In this room, for instance, you can't see these guys normally, so you gotta use the mirrors as your guide. Here, you use the shadows caused by the projector. It impresses me so much that I wish more rooms in the game did things like this. Like with the previously mentioned banana ghosts and the ghosts you encounter later that can create shockwaves. Combine a room like this with these three ghosts and you've got a sickly diabolical room idea, but unfortunately it never goes that far. Of course I realize this idea would be way too hard for the casual players and the kids, and if that was the case, then it doesn't have to be required for progression. It can be a sort of optional challenge type of room, like what they did with the guest rooms in Area 4. Something like what RPGs like to do with post-game super bosses. Or this game was made easy on purpose to be a more comfortable experience for the casual crowd, as I previously mentioned, so I could be missing the point entirely. But even so, I like what I see here. The portrait ghosts also take things up a notch, and let's go in order. First up, we have the Dancing Whirlwindas, two ghosts who share a heart for some reason. I find that both adorable and creepy as all hell. They won't even show themselves at first though, so you gotta clear the room first. When you first enter the ballroom, there are shy ghosts, which are also dancing ironically, who are the first advanced type of enemy you face. They wear masks that block their hearts, so first you have to suck up the mask separately. The problem with this is that they immediately warp away afterwards and come back with another one, giving you little time to react. So it's just annoying to have to deal with these things when they show up. Which isn't too often, so there's that, but it still annoys me to suck up the mask, have them warp away before I have the chance to vacuum them, only to come back with another mask, forcing me to repeat the process. Not a fan of these guys personally. I'd prefer if the masks stayed off and they backed off, throwing their spear at you or something like that. When they're all gone, the dance floor starts moving and the dancing whirlwinds come out to play. They don't attack you, they just dance. But the catch is that you can't see them unless you're on the dance floor with them. But you gotta keep yourself from shining your flashlight at them or you'll miss your chance due to the limited space of the dance floor. I'm not entirely sure if it was intentionally designed this way, but either way, I like it a lot. You're required to be precise with how you move in order to get them to expose themselves to you and suck them up. Great start to the area. It's at this time that you enter a smaller storage-like room where you have to solve a puzzle to reveal where the boos are hiding. I gotta say, having a button that's literally on the fourth wall is extremely clever. Here's where the boo hunting officially starts, so you'll have to backtrack to previously established areas. But most of them are right next to each other, so I have no problem with this. Next we have the only portrait ghost in the game to be roaming a hallway, Shivers the Butler. You can't do anything to him when you first see him, so you're forced to bypass him for now and explore more until you encounter the fire element medal and meet Madame Clairvoya for the first time. She tells you that unlike other ghosts, she's here to help. You don't exactly know why, but that doesn't really matter right now. She explains that if you find anything that happens to have been left behind by Mario, to bring it to her. Here's where we get into the Mario's Missing Items side quest. These may not make a lick of sense in the story, but as a gameplay mechanic, man is it a nice inclusion. You're occasionally finding these things as you progress through areas 2 and 3. And each time you find one, you have the option to go back to Madame Clairvoya and get clues on where Mario is before you see him, with some foreshadowing on the final boss, or you could just wait until you get them all as to not waste time and avoid unnecessary backtracking. This is how you do a fetch quest. It works in the context of the narrative, and it doesn't bring the game to a screeching halt. While it's not perfect since they throw the shoe and glove at you back to back near the end of Area 3, the hat, letter, and star are used brilliantly. This is what I call the framework of a good fetch quest, and I wish other games would learn from this. Looking at you, Legend of Zelda. Back to Shivers. Now armed with the new fire element medal, you can now freak him out by using your new flamethrower to light the candles that he holds, and follow him to suck him up when he tries to put it out. Now we get to the portrait ghost anyone who's played this game will tell you that they're a fan of, including me. Melody Pianissima. Unlike most other portrait ghosts, she also doesn't show herself right away. You have to lure her out with music that's a nice callback to the theme that started it all. But the references aren't done there. When she shows up, she decides to quiz you on music, which also happen to be references to past games. She has several tracks that she can play, so it'll be different each playthrough, and I love it. Then she's ready to fight you with her music sheets. Melody is probably, unsurprisingly, my favorite portrait ghost in the game, not just because of the music references, but because she's cute and decides to have some fun before fighting you. Not to mention, sucking her up can be tricky due to all the instruments in the room that can get in your way and allow her to break free. She's a fan favorite, and it's easy to see why. I love her too. And next, in stark contrast to this beautiful musical artist, we have Mr. Lugs, which is probably my least favorite portrait ghost in the game, and it all stems from this stupidly gigantic table. It gets in the way of everything. Trying to catch the server ghost especially sucks with this table because I swear it gives them extra cover when flashing your light on them, which really annoyed me. So much so that it forced me to choose a side and wait for the one on that side instead of just waiting from the front to vacuum whichever one comes first like I normally do. Not only that, but it makes it extremely difficult to get a gold rank on Mr. Lugs himself because you already know. This table is too goddamn big for its own good. Spooky the dog is rather unremarkable really, but I do enjoy how you use his master to suck him up. I find that pretty creative. Now we get to Bogmire, the boss of Area 2. Honestly, I can't decide whether I love this fight or hate it. Let me explain. He leaves shadows of himself that require to be sucked up and chucked back at him to stun him, which is a mechanic I enjoy. But these shadows are all he does for the whole fight, so it gets stale pretty quickly. He's much more difficult than Chauncey since his shadows can interrupt you when you're trying to suck him up, but he can tend to break out too quickly anyway if you're unlucky with the lightning. The shadows also get faster and can overwhelm you when he's at low health, which can potentially lead to unfair situations where it's impossible for you to do anything without taking damage. See what I mean? This fight leaves me so mixed because it has an amazingly creative premise for a boss fight, but that same creativeness is also a double-edged sword, so it leaves me unsure about how to feel about it. I don't look forward to this fight, nor do I dread it, so I'll give it a pass though, if only on originality alone. Area 3 is where the game starts to ramp it up a bit, shown by these hazard ghosts that appear in the hallway that, when touched or vacuumed, blow up, damaging you. For the first time, you're encountering ghosts you don't want to vacuum, and they respawn indefinitely, so you can't just tank the damage and be rid of them. So you're forced to just evade them. However, this is where the poor depth perception shows its ugly face once again, as you don't know which angle is safe, which may lead you to taking unnecessary damage, which sucks. The most notable room, though, is the observatory. It's where you get the star by, I shit you not, blowing up the moon. Don't look at me like that! I'm no Piccolo! Houston, we have a problem. A Michael Bay type problem. God, this is unnecessarily stupid awesome, and I love it. Easily one of my favorite rooms in the game, and this is coming right after some kind of ritual-like room that channels its inner Pac-Man. By this time, you should have all of Mario's dropped items, which, when collected, allows you to suck up Madame Clairvoyant as she can return to her painting satisfied. This is emphasized by the fact she puts up no fight whatsoever and allows you to suck her up. Well, now I just feel bad. She means no harm, so surely she should be allowed to roam around as she pleases. Now let's get into Area 3's actual portrait ghosts, starting with Biff Atlas. Obvious Arnold Schwarzenegger joke is obvious. Huh, lifting weights? I think I'll join you. Yeah! Oops, sorry big guy. I was practicing for Smash Bros. Little man think he's stronger than Biff? Put the cookie down! You dare mock strongman Biff? Biff crush mustache with pinky finger! I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I like how this ghost forces you to take advantage of the environment to stun him, and all the workout equipment makes A-ranking this buff ghost tricky. Next we have Petunia, who humorously is in the shower, so you have to peep on her misleading figure and spray her with ice to stun her. This one is great not because of its difficulty or anything, but because it just cracks me up. Nana, though, is where I start to have issues. To stun her, you need to utilize these yarn balls, but they roll around on the ground, which not only makes them hard to suck up, but they get in your way and trip you up, allowing Nana to hit you. Kinda cheap if you ask me, and the room itself isn't much better because of all the huge furniture, leading to the same problem I had with Mr. Lugs, though not quite as severe. Slim Bank Shot makes up for this though, because his fight is similar to Nana, but better. He hits billiard balls around that fly around and bounce off the walls, but you can suck them up and shoot them back at him. The pool table in the middle is big, but not too big, and it gives you a challenge without feeling cheap. Finally, though, we have the twins, who turn out to be those children of Novell and Lycia from Area 1 that I previously mentioned. If you take the time to read the books in the library, you can see some build-up to these two, which I find to be a nice touch. These two like to make their fight into a little game of hide-and-seek, which is just random trial and error until you beat them and they decide to label you a cheater and fight you both at once. Now this is a difficult fight, since while you're trying to suck up one of them, the other will throw a bomb and interrupt you. Not to mention they're riding toy vehicles which will need to be sucked up first, before you can get to them. And because of the small room, it's that much harder to avoid their attacks, especially when you're trying to suck up one of them. I still haven't A-ranked these two, even to this day. But the good doesn't stop there, cause next we have the big bad of Area 3 and my favorite boss ghost in the game. Boolossus. 15 boos combined together to fight Luigi on the balcony of the mansion. The setup is perfect and it only gets better. Remember that one fleshed out ice element use I mentioned earlier? Well, this is where that comes to the forefront. By using the unicorn statues, you can break it apart to reveal all the boos inside. But you can't just suck them up as is, because if you try, they'll just scatter and avoid you until you either turn your back to them or give them enough time to reform. Yeah, they're smart little buggers, so you're required to take the ice that comes from the statues and freeze them. Only then can you suck them up. But keep in mind, there are 15 of these guys, so you won't be able to stop them all right away before they combine again. But it's nothing compared to when you only have one boo left. Allow me to be blunt. This last boo, right here, is the true final boss of the game. I'm not kidding. This one little boo is absurdly smart and will most likely be where most of your damage and or deaths come from in this fight, or maybe even the game as a whole. It's the hardest part of the entire game in my opinion, and while I love how resilient he is, he's a little too resilient if you ask me. You gotta play his game, make him come to you and trick him before you can attempt to freeze him and suck him up. While I do love this, I think they went a little overboard with it, cause you can spend a good half hour or more just on this one boo. And after a while, it goes from a nice change of pace to incredibly obnoxious after a while. Honestly, I think the giant form should do something else too, cause all he does is chase after you. If he had a fireball of some kind that he would shoot after reforming, then that'd make this boss perfect in my eyes. But that's probably me just setting my standards too high again. Despite this, I still consider this the best boss in the game, and if that weren't enough, when you're done, your boo counter will skyrocket from 20 to 35. A great reward for a great boss fight. On to Area 4. Which throws you right into the thick of it, because as soon as you come back and you go to unlock that door, the roof is struck by lightning and the power goes out. We are now in a blackout, my friends, and damn does it start out with a bang. But because the power's out, that means the ghosts swarm you by the fuckload, for better and for worse. Sucking up so many ghosts at once can be a huge blast, and there have been times where I just wander the mansion in this state looking for a fight. However, it can just as easily be the most unfair part of the game, solely due to one small thing. You see, whenever a ghost appears, Luigi flinches for a second because he's startled. So what's the problem? It's the fact he can get hit by anything else like other ghosts during this animation, and there's no way to stop it. Admittedly, this is present throughout the whole game, but it's most notable here due to so many ghosts popping up at once and causing you to take a lot of unnecessary damage. This can even cause you to get dogpiled, which is even more unfair. Luckily, the blackout doesn't last long if you know where to go, so when it happens, you can just go down to the generator room and get the blackout over with quickly, but the ghosts won't always let you do this unscathed. Then there's the matter of this guy, Uncle Grimly, who is rather unremarkable if I'm being honest. He doesn't attack you, nor is it hard to suck him up, so just remove him and continue on your merry way. After turning the lights back on, Area 4 begins proper. There's not really much to the area itself, but it does have some cool set pieces like this ice room and whatever the hell this room is. I can't say I enjoy this area as a whole though, simply because of the booze and the fact it spawns the attic and the basement, meaning you'll have to go all the way up to the top of the mansion and all the way back down again multiple times if you plan on getting every boo. It's such a chore. I mean, look at all this HP. You were dealing with 100 HP boos at the end of the last area, and now suddenly you're being bombarded by 300 HP boos that go from area to area that's a chore to go back and forth from because of this room right here. Like, who thought this was a good idea? To the game's credit, though, at least it's cool being able to go to the roof and unlock this secret room where you can get the key for the guest rooms. This is where you fight the optional portrait ghost Sue P, which is one of my favorite fights in the game. Not only does she use floating dolls to try and trip you up as you're sucking her, but the room she's in is upside down, which can throw you off. Plus, she's one of the few ghosts in the game that I find legitimately creepy with the way she screams at you to get out in her sleep, complete with a rumble when you enter the room. She isn't the only one either. I enjoy all of this area's bosses starting at the roof, but to get to the roof, you must first go through the Clockwork Soldiers. They're like the twins, but even better since there's 3 of them, and you're also in a much bigger room allowing you to maneuver more freely. I find it a pretty fair trade-off, and it makes this fight super fun. Because of the space, there are multiple ways to face these guys. Do you go the safe route and keep your distance to try and get them one at a time alone, or will you go for the ballsy strat and fight 2 or even all 3 at once for a quicker kill? And they don't flinch from your flashlight right away, nor do they disappear when you shine it at them as long as they have their wind-up piece, so you gotta get rid of that first. And they respawn fast. I enjoy this fight because it forces you to be more strategic with how you tackle these guys, or else you'll be at death's welcome mat by the time you're done if you don't die outright, which I have here on more than one occasion, so don't feel bad if you do. Jarvis comes next, which there isn't much to say on him. You play an ice-type spin on Whack-A-Mole to get him out of his hidey hole to suck him up. While fun, I find it ends too quickly, which honestly is a common nitpick I have with a lot of the portrait ghosts in the game, which I think is the reason why there are so many of them, but I would have liked a little more time with these guys. Especially Vincent Van Gogh, whom actually has a bit of build-up and has a fun fight, but the game doesn't spend time to flesh him out, leaving me feeling a bit empty. This is a shame because of how interesting I find this guy to be. You'll find that this is where all the common enemy ghost types come from. Vincent Van Gogh paints them and brings them to life, which contextualizes Egad's line at the beginning of the game, where he swears there are more and more ghosts by the day. The setup is nice and it had potential, but it feels disappointing since it's over so quickly. I think he should have been a boss ghost like Chauncey and Bogmire, then maybe I wouldn't feel this way, but then again, this game feels too short as it is, being able to be beaten within a single afternoon and all. But in making that segue into Vincent Van Gogh, I actually skipped over one ghost, so let's go over him real quick. This is Sir Weston, and he's quite annoying. Not because of the boss himself, no, he's actually pretty simple. Just dodge his ice blasts and burn his ass. No, but because of the room itself and the ice physics. I hate ice physics and everything to do with them, and this game is no exception. But I can't complain too much since it's only one room, it ends fairly quickly, and it lets me do things like this. I'm too easily amused. Finally, now we have the final boss of Luigi's Mansion, King Boo, who is a worthy conclusion to the game. When you confront him, he gives you a chilling villain speech and sucks Luigi inside a painting to fight him man to ghost. Well, it would be, except for suddenly Bowser. I don't get it either. Like, what the fuck is this thing supposed to be? A mecha? A robot? Is it actually Bowser and King Boo's just possessing a lifeless husk? He can breathe fire and all that like the real thing, but you end up needing to blow his head off to get a shot at King Boo, so I don't know what's going on here. The battlefield is spacious in this fight, with a good variety of attacks coming from the Dastardly Duo. My favorite part, though, is when you use his own attack against him to force King Boo out of hiding, and the head is still swiping at you with Ice Blast as you whittle down King Boo's health, which is at a whopping 500. This ain't no joke. But after a long battle, you finally suck him up, take his crown, and save Mario to turn him back to normal, ending Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion is a very enjoyable game that presents itself masterfully with a very unique spin on the Mario formula that works extremely well. It originally was a much different game at its core, and while some of that early beta footage makes me wish that build of the game could have returned for the Hidden Mansion, what we ended up getting is still very fun with the whole Ghostbusters vibe it's got going for it. Exploring the mansion is a blast, with all the character the game has in its world, and the creepy yet quirky and childlike atmosphere giving the game a rather unique tone. The combat is odd but fulfilling, and works very well alongside the portrait ghosts that were a great spin on traditional bosses. It's enjoyable, but honestly, that's all it really is to me. Enjoyable. Nothing spectacular that would warrant an immediate replay. There isn't enough substance to the game that makes me yearn for more. It leaves me wondering about all of the still untapped potential. The short length of the game honestly hurts it more than it helps. The boos, while fine at the start, really get out of hand, ending with an area, while not terrible, is by far the worst part of the game and turns a refreshing change of pace into an outright inconvenience. I enjoyed my time with it, but I don't see the need to go back to it too often because of how little it has to offer despite its high replay value. At the time it was made, I'm sure it showed how unique and well-designed games could still become, but now, its controls are definitely starting to show its age. The physics engine is pretty finicky at times, the hitboxes aren't balanced and feel unfair at points, and just a bunch of other little technical issues that hold the game back a lot in my opinion. The presentation may have a whole bunch of small touches that I appreciate a lot, but I can't say the same for the gameplay. The main issue here is that it doesn't let nearly anything reach its full potential. Like the game was afraid that we may not like what it was showing off and decides to let it end before it really has a chance to get going. It lacks a lot of quality of life aspects that other adventure-esque games, some of which that were released way before this game, just do way better. It's also pretty tiring if you end up playing this for long periods of time. If you can get past all of that, and you aren't bothered by the little things the way I am, then you'll love this. I can recommend this as a good gateway to console gaming, or for those Mario fans looking for something a bit different. But for those hardcore gamers like me who are looking for a little more in what they play, won't find that here. What you see is what you get, and while that doesn't make it bad by any means, it can leave some feeling unsatisfied. It's a classic that's enjoyable for what it is, but it could have been so much more. It was then shown off again at A3? What the fuck is an A3? First of all, the player was required to save Mario within a certain time limit, and the GameCube... The GameCube... What, is there a GameCube in a GameCube game now? Though, if you want to know more about the Luigi's Mansion beta, I'll have a link to beta... A link? I swear I'm the king for making up random words. He is saved in the nick of time, however, by a ghost researcher by the name of Professor Elvin Gadd, who tells Luigi that his mansion... What, does Egad own the mansion now? He owns a mansion full of ghosts and sucks them up himself? What the fuck kind of sense does that make? The letter and star don't bother me, since those really are just items, but the hat, glove, and shoe are accessories, yet when you find... Despite having the premise of a horror game, it's still very colorful... Despite having the premise of a horror game, it's still very colorful and charming at its core, per Mario fashion. To Egad's... Insert suku suku, yabo yabo, lemon ba. Here. Okay, Dad! Hold on. I'm busy watering these plants. God. If he wants to complain, then I'll just delay the plot on purpose to spite him. Alright, Dad, hold on. I'm busy watering these plants. God, if he wants to complain, then I'll just delay the plot on purpose to spite him. That completely ruins the atmosphere. This goes for more of an explorer type of experience. You're examining each room by interacting with... Interacting? What the fuck am I saying? To vacuum a ghost, you're required to shine your flashlight at them and make them show their heart. To make them show their hearts. This gives you the idea to use water to wake her up so you can reveal her heart to you. So she can reveal her heart to you. Where's Luigi just like ripping them open? Forcing their hearts to... Oh my god. I need to stop. They show up way too often out of nowhere and ruin the mood with their loud... That was terrible. What the fuck? It can be a sort of optional challenge type of room, like what they did with the gust room. It sounded like I said gust. There are sudden gusts of wind just blowing out of nowhere in Luigi's mansion. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now we get to the portrait ghost everyone who's ever played this game will tell you is one of the best in the game, including me. Melody Piantissimo. Why do I keep adding a T there? Piantissimo. Is this Piantissimo from Sunshine? Little man think he's stronger than Biff? Put the cookie down! Oh wait, that's Luigi. Shit. Fuck. I messed up. I enjoy all of these areas' portrait ghosts, starting at the road. Starting at the root? Okay. Okay, past me. Just completely forget that typo. There are multiple ways to face these guys. Do you go the safe route and keep your distance to try and get them one at a time alone, or will you go for the ballsy strat and... Ballsy? Is that even a fucking word? I enjoy this fight because it forces you to be more strategic with how you tackle these guys, or else you'll be at death's welcome mat by the time you're done if you don't die outright, which I have... I can't breathe! Why did I make these lines so goddamn long? But in making that segue into Vincent van Gogh, I actually skipped over one portrait ghost, so let's get over him real quick. I'm starting to speak gibberish. Finally, now we have the final boss of King Boo, Luigi's mansion. I'm fighting the entire mansion as a boss fight. This is Monster House, right? The Boos, while fine at the... Shit.